Hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. We are going live today with Caryn. We're going to be discussing money and dating and how to have these conversations. We're just waiting for some of you to join and for Caryn to show up, of course. Did I say happy Sunday or did I say happy Monday? I don't even remember. Okay, Caryn, I see you. 1 second. Let me invite you. Thank you for joining, Tamar and Haya.
Hi, how are you?
Hey, Caryn, how are you? Okay,
Yes.
good. How's the connection? You see me? You hear me? Amazing. Okay. Okay, so let's get right to it. I think this is like a really interesting conversation. I think that the reason you wanted to bring up this conversation is because people don't even realize it's a conversation they should be having in dating. And I think like that's like a big part of this conversation is like
Yeah,
awareness
it's
based.
really
Do you
important to
agree?
me because it's something I've seen at every stage with couples, whether that's dating, newlyweds, engaged couples, and then like longtime married couples really struggling to discuss
Mm-hmm.
money and not really realizing
Mm-hmm.
that the premarital, the dating stage, I think is the ideal time to begin difficult discussions because so much about charged topics are firstly that we're taught that these topics are charged, and money I think is one of those things that for a lot of people there's an intensity that always existed around it in their lives, and therefore it's hard to bring up, or they're not sure how to bring up and not sure what they're looking for in the discussion or what to listen out for. So I think it's really important to almost like discuss the discussion of money.
Yeah. 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 I love that. And would you say like our conversation today is focused more on like the dating person, like that's dating? Because I feel like that conversation would change on some level during dating and during like I feel like
So I
there's a
think
difference
there are
and I'm
some
curious what
main
your thoughts are on
points
that.
that I'll try to emphasize when they come up that are really for across the board. And then definitely the focus, or the way that I was certainly thinking when coming up with points, was more toward the prevention of these discussions getting or issues coming up, right? Which I consider the dating, exactly, the proactive
Being
versus the
proactive.
dating stage, so that when people are married,
Yeah,
more engaged, or dating more seriously, these things have already begun to be a discussion.
I love that. I really do. I think it's really important. So yeah, so I'm happy. So if there's something that you're saying that like applies to marriage more than to dating, you'll try to emphasize that. But I think that, the default would be that this is like for people that are dating. I think that's really important because I think that again, it's like proactive, preventative, and something that many of people in our community are going through at this point. Okay, awesome. So I love the outline that you created. So I want to start with exactly like the way you started. So let's talk about like values around
Okay.
money,
So one
and
thing
things
that
like
I think
that.
can come up in dating without even being kind of charged or heated, that I think is just important, is your values around money. So one example of what that means is kind of your lifestyle, right? What do you see being important to you? Do you prefer to spend more of your money on like vacations than your house? So, things that come into values that are more charged, let's say, are like how many kids you might want to have. For some people, that's a financial decision.
Mm-hmm.
Some people come from large families and feel like they really grew up not having money, and it scares them to have a lot of children. Some people feel like they would like all their
Mm-hmm.
money to be spent on children, and they would like to have like 10 children. So just the independent values. And again, of
Mm-hmm.
course, those things change with time. So we're talking about the dating when these things are ideals and when you can begin to think about it and it's a thought. Um, Obviously, some of those things, change, and God is really in control, or whatever your belief system is. But
Sure.
basically, like your lifestyle and what you value, and what you value spending on, and what your value is around saving. Do you have a percentage of your paycheck that you want to
Mm-hmm.
save? Is there a way that you
Mm-hmm.
like to live? Do you like to live where everything you make gets spent because you like to live in the moment? Do you believe in saving and you're really always thinking of retirement or long-term pictures? So those are things that really
Mm-hmm.
can match up or not match up, or you can compromise on, but are a good idea, I believe, to start discussing, like not being 65 years old, retiring, and being like, we don't have any money here. Like, did we ever talk about this? No, oops, we didn't. Now, what you discussed
Right.
at possibly your 20s, 30s, 40s is not going to be there when you're 60. Like, we can't guarantee that, but it's just knowing a value system, because if you're both living a life a certain way, you're more likely to continue that discussion, so that if the money's not there, you're kind of aware of why. If it is, then you're aware that you both work together to get there.
Hmm. I love that. And like, how would you say, and maybe like not, you didn't write this out on the outline, but I'm thinking of it now. It's like, would you recommend like meaning this conversation should be had during dating? Is there any like parameters around that? Like, do you think that like it's just like a good idea for any like the boy or the girl to bring it up, or like how like any framework that you have for people to like bring up this conversation? If it's not, I think that sometimes it can be like just it can come up really like naturally, but let's say it doesn't. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I feel like when these things come up naturally, you don't get as much of a clear picture, because it's like, oh, by the way, like, oh, I know that you vacation nicely in the past. Like, I'm assuming that like this is the type of lifestyle you want to lead, and like the person doesn't. That's really just an assumption that you made versus having these like drawn out conversations. So, any like advice you would give
I
in
don't
that
think there's
capacity?
any like rules in terms of the male or the female bringing it up. I don't think that. I think what's very important that I would always try to emphasize is what is your energy in bringing it up. So if you see, let's say, the other person spending a lot on dinner, or bought you a gift that you're like, oh my God, that's so expensive, it
Mm-hmm.
makes me so uncomfortable. Um, Coming from that place is probably, again, very important to decipher. Obviously, I recommend therapy or like a confidant to discuss what it felt like for you to receive a gift that feels like too much or something, or you're worried about spending, whatever may come up for you. Really important to look at for yourself first, always. So that's a huge
Yeah.
disclaimer that I want to give.
Mm-hmm.
And then notice your energy. Like, are you in an open, calm, curious place when you're discussing this? Because if you are, that's the right time. So that's just in terms of timing, because you really want to stay in an open mind of sort of like, again, a lot of these also, which will come into my next point, come from our family of origin. And for a lot of the time, we don't really think
Mm-hmm.
into why did my parents spend so much on vacation, but our house was whatever it was. I might actually prefer my day-to-day life being a little bit of a higher level and not vacationing, let's say. So I think it's important to look at how I
Mm-hmm.
grew up, what are my personal values, and then take it to the date and say, again, I can't say like this number date is the right time, but I would say as it progresses, as it's getting more serious, and you're thinking of creating a lifestyle with this person, it would be the right time to start discussing lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Like around the same time, because a question that does come up a lot is like, where might you want to live? Right? Where might you want to live? How might
Mm-hmm.
you want to live? Right? So I think that goes
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
Again, am I coming
exactly,
from an
exactly.
open place?
Well,
Have I looked into myself, what my family did? Am I open to hearing what your family values, what you personally value?
mhm. I love that. I love that, and I think that that's like a great barometer to the conversation, and the moment should feel easy, and it should feel safe. And if it's not, then that's like red flag, or it's not the right time, or it's not the right person, and you might have to work that through with a coach or a therapist. But it's always the right time if it's an easy, open, like
Exactly.
comfortable
Noticing your own
conversation,
energy to
essentially.
start the conversation, if you're going to be starting, is really important. And then noticing the other person's energy and then what they bring out in you is really, really important. Because if a person, you just feel like the way they're talking about money is making you really uncomfortable, um,
Mm-hmm.
or it seems like money is really the priority there and not the relationship and not how they're saying things to you. You really want to look into that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, things like mine versus yours. Again, not saying couples can't have their own. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with having like separate bank accounts and like a joint. It's not the inherent things. It's what is the energy to this? Am I going to be calculating everything you make versus everything I make? If I give you money, is that going to make me feel a certain way? And am I allotting it to you? Are we together? Right? You want to really look for things like that, because I have seen issues come
Mm-hmm.
up in relationships where I thought it would be ours, but you keep calling it yours. It makes me so uncomfortable. Again, I do believe some of those discussions could be happening earlier. And if you're clued in and keyed in, especially also to your body, how do you feel during this conversation? What is coming up for you? Do you feel a certain panic inside as this person is talking to you about how they make money, how they save money, how they spend money, what they, feel about money. I think it's really, really important to notice yourself and how you're feeling about that discussion itself.
Yeah, that's a really, really great point. And like, I would imagine that however you're feeling will have like a dual meaning. I think part of it will have a meaning that is completely your own, meaning based on things you've been through, maybe some trauma, maybe not trauma, but maybe just like your own values being challenged or something like that. And then the other part will have to do with that other person. Like maybe they are giving you off that energy. So don't just cough it up to like, okay, this person is terrible, and not either that, oh, my issue because I came from this type of family and this type of system. No, any feeling you're having is really important to like explore and decipher and like pull it apart, because like you don't want to just ignore these clues and then realize that like, no, actually it wasn't all your trauma. It was like this person is unhealthy around money or control or something like that.
Yes,
So I love
your
that you said that. Thank you.
because exactly. Sometimes in with people, it's the dynamic. It's not this person's unhealthy, this person's unhealthy. It can be that. It can be both. But it also can be, you just bring up in me something that makes me really uncomfortable. Maybe that's work I still have to do. Maybe we could still work it out, but I need that clue. I need to know. And that way, again, preventive, I could start working on that now. I can notice that this makes me feel a certain way and I can work it through. It may or may not be helpful that you brought that up in me. Maybe there's something about you that's bringing up things that I have to work on, and that's really makes me feel good. Maybe you're very receptive. Maybe it's cluing me in that this is not a match, but you did give me great information about myself.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Okay, amazing. So next step, I think we led into it a little bit, was like money in your family of origin. I think this is bleeding off the first step, which is your values around money. And I wanted to hear what
So
you had to
definitely
say about that.
in our family of origin, we may get ideas about saving and spending and what to spend on, what to save on, how we felt about our family of origin. Like, let's say Yontif was always so stressful and we had one piece of chicken, even though we had the money for more because my parents didn't believe in spending that. I would like to have grand Yontif. Just a good thing to look at.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also cultural differences. And I find this comes up a lot around wedding planning and engagement. It's really, really important to discuss with somebody you're dating, engaged to, marrying. What are the cultural differences? Even if we're both, let's say, Ashkenaz, but one of you comes from a certain region within that even, and another comes from somewhere else. Like, there are often things that have to do with countries and places of origin that will even dictate wedding planning. Or even a family will be like, oh, we really believe in this and this because we feel that that's our way of showing love is through buying this, this, and this. If you don't buy it for us, it makes us feel that you don't care, right? So it's just getting into what, like the behind of the things. Like, money is never just money. And I find wedding planning can bring up a lot of that. And in terms of even in-laws and the two families like merging, understanding why seating is so important to them or having more people can really help. It doesn't mean you have to give into those things, but knowing why culturally and familially and value system wise these things are important will help you compromise in a way that's not just, I can't believe they want to spend money on that. That's so ridiculous. It's this means this to them. Oh, that's such an interesting thing. I wonder if there's a way for us to give them that feeling, but maybe still save because we're not so comfortable with that or we can't afford that.
Love that, like curiosity, approaching it from curiosity and realizing like money's like the symptom. It's not the actual like thing. It's really just like the expression of whatever the value is. And yeah, like I think understanding like your values based on your families, and even like it's a good time to like pull that apart and be like, just because my family valued that, does that mean I value that? Maybe you don't. And maybe it's just like a family, kind of like you never were challenged to like open your mind. And I think having this conversation with someone that you're potentially wanting to spend your life with is a good time to like double check all your like belief systems, your value systems, and things like that. Amazing. And then the next point was like gender roles around money. I think this is really important, especially when I introduced this live, I said, we're not talking necessarily to like the 17, 18, 19-year-olds that are dating and getting married, because I feel like in that case, maybe they're not having these conversations, even though maybe it would be encouraged to. But I think that as people are in their 20s and 30s and dating, and then seriously dating and wanting to engage that person, both people are working, have been saving hopefully, and have some sort of relationship with their own money. So
So
like, I
I
want
think
to hear
it's
what you
really
have to say
important.
about
Again,
that.
this is something that's changed a lot over the years, right? Who's working, who might be working, what their values about working are. So I think, again, the values around the gender role and working is very, very important, because if you have one person who's like, both my parents worked, I expect us both to work, and the other person's like, well, my mom or dad stayed at home, and I expected that one of us would be with, let's say, kids, it's really important to have that discussion. And again, it's about money, but it's not about money. So it's important to just note that. And again, always to yourself first. So this, I would say, is for the 17, 18, 19-year-olds of what is your value around this? You may be forced to work, but not believe in work. Your partner might not make money. You may resent that. You may both want sort of to make a certain amount, and one person really has a value to make it to the top because of success or because of money. And that's also a discussion to have, right? I want to be the top of my field because that's important to me, but I really want somebody who's home more. So again, with each gender, I think it can go nowadays any which way. But there are families, and again, this comes back to that family value of, I saw this is really what I expected. Well, you can't expect if you didn't have the discussion. So that's what I find really, really important. You can't be like, I thought you'd be a stay-at-home wife, but you never mentioned that you wanted that. You knew this person was going for their master's, but you didn't think to mention that you wanted a stay-at-home wife. Like that, I've heard that story so many times, and I'm always like, and it never got mentioned, but sometimes it doesn't. So again, just should be discussed. Now, again, people change their mind, people evolve.
Yeah. Didn't express. How about that? You can't expect if you didn't express. That's a good one.
You condensed it really nicely. Thank you.
But I also think that like it's on the let's say we're being very like gender role roley here, but like let's say the guy is expecting that the girl would be a stay-at-home mom, and then it's like, okay, you can't expect if you didn't express. But I also think that it's like the girl's job to also be able to like express,
absolutely.
For like it's easy to say like, you should have expressed that, and I totally agree with that. Like he should have, but also the girl should have been like, this is what my plans are.
And I just mentioned
if
as
that
a funny
was
example, but absolutely, it's on both. And a dad could want to be a stay-at-home dad, or a man could want to be a stay-at-home dad, and should totally express that.
Sure.
And and again, I think gender roles in terms of the conservative or old school model have mostly gone out the window a lot. Not totally, and whatever makes people comfortable, but that's the thing. I think nowadays it's what makes you comfortable. And there is evolutions. There are people who went for their masters, went to law school, men or women, and decided they wanted to be a stay-at-home parent, or it was even more economical to be a stay-at-home parent. And the other person might be like, oh, I wasn't used to this. This really changes our dynamic. That's fine and well. So speaking now to the married people, sometimes it's just important for like a check-in in therapy of, we've evolved. Let's just look into that. What are our new value systems? And again, it doesn't have to break people apart. They can just compromise in a new value system, because we evolve as people, and money also creates an evolution. We have more money, we have less money, we're going to have to make new choices. But we really want to come at that from a safe place. So whether that's therapy or not, I think it's just important to recognize that there is a safe place to come from, and a safe way to have a discussion about money and the evolution of money, because we often thought we would make it and it didn't yet happen, or we would never make it, but look at it, we did. And that's important also, I think, to look at.
I like that. Yes, I agree. I couldn't agree more. And then so that's more like with the gender roles and who and I think these things, like you said, they're so fluid. Like we can have all these like we plan and God last type of scenarios where like things totally change, right? For good reasons, for reasons that look at not as good. And I think that having these conversations earlier help you come at it from a safer place later on, because it's like we saw eye to eye at this point. Now things change for both of us. Now we have to like reshift how we are going to compromise or see eye to eye here. And I think another just component to this is like the empowerment around money, or how you called it, the empowerment, which I like that phrase, with accounts and like how that works. And I guess again, these things change and shift, but I think this is something that maybe starts more as a foundational thing, like whose account. I think people have these questions, and I don't know who answered, like how they get answered. Okay. So like if you can address
sometimes like with taking charge of money or having accounts, are they both in your name? Is a house in both names? It's important to discuss the values around that. Again, I can't say there are exact rights and wrongs to how to do that. I think it depends on the couple, but are we coming from the decisions from a mutual place? Like, for some people, who takes charge of the money is who's better at math. I think that can make great sense. I don't think that's a male female thing. I think sometimes you sit down and you see who's better with numbers. Are we both great with numbers? Should we both be looking over credit card bills? Should we see who has more time to take care of paying the bills? But always keeping each other apprised of the numbers. When it comes to empowerment, I think it's really, really important to look at. And again, as much as you can during dating, this is something that's easier in marriage because you're living in the same house to sort of even get what I'm talking about. But you can sort of practice it during dating. I would say engagement probably more so of like, oh, how much was that dinner? Oh, I don't want to tell you, right? Why not? Now maybe because I wanted to treat you. Okay, but it's going to be our money very soon. I would just like to know how much we're spending. I want to have an idea, right? That's to whoever. Or I bought you this gift. Oh, it looks really expensive. Was it? I feel so bad. Oh, I would never tell you how much something cost. Never? You would never tell me? So just sort of looking into, are we able to? And again, sometimes that's a learned value from a family of, oh, we don't talk about money. You know what? I think it would be comfortable if we did start to talk about money. I think even knowing how much a gift costs, even though it's a gift, it just makes me comfortable because then I know how much is comfortable for us to spend. I have an idea of how much you spend, how much I would spend on you. I don't want to make you uncomfortable by spending way more, way less. So let's just see if we could have an open discussion, right? Taking care of the finances. You do the bills because you're good at math, but are you going to tell me how much each credit card was, or are you going to keep that to yourself? Do I want it kept to yourself because I'd rather not know? Do I want you to tell me and you will tell me? Will you keep telling me, by the way, the credit card bill was this, by the way, in this tone that makes it feel like I only use the electric alone, right? So in dating, it's a little bit harder to find these things, right? These are clearly like marital things that come up more so. But you can begin to look for signs. Again, what is the energy around money? What is the energy around spending? What is the energy around these discussions? If I ask how much something costs, if I say that I bought something and the other person's face is like, you what? You bought shoes for how much? You spent how much on the flowers for the wedding? Is it in an angry way? Is it in a curious way? Is it in a confused way? Because again, family values come up so much around that. You know, just different things. People work very hard for their money. Sometimes they're just used to, especially I would say, again, I don't want to overgeneralize, but if you've been single for a long time and working for a long time, I think you can really get a big sum in your bank account. And that might feel, I would imagine, very difficult to share in a certain way. Now, some people are, that's totally not a big deal. So again, not in an overgeneralizing way, because certainly there's a lot of people who are creating this for whoever the both will become. But for some people, I could imagine feeling like I saved a large sum of money myself, I would like to know how we're going to go about this. And I think if you ask in a curious way versus this is money I made, I worked for a long time, this is mine, is very different. So it's the nature of the discussion. And again, someone might feel that way, but might be able to say, oh, right, if we're getting married, this is now both of ours. I just wasn't used to that. Right. So it doesn't mean there's no compromise. Right. It's just sort of noticing the nature around these discussions and how much somebody's willing to evolve.
Right. And like, I think it goes back to like our first point, which is like tapping into your own feelings around this. Like, how do you feel when it's about your money? How do you feel when it's about his money or her money? And how do you feel, again, like back to yourself? Like when it's your, like, what is the feeling that's coming up for you? What do you think your own stuff, and what do you think is the other person's like energy that they're bringing into this? But you're saying that, I know that you work with a lot of singles, a lot of couples. There's not like a formula, like, or even like a standard. For sure there's no formula, I get that, but like even like a standard, like it's not like it has to be this way. Like I think people have this idea that like you're going into a relationship, you know, you want to start off on this like amazing trusting journey. And I feel like there's even like these like maybe like the empowered wife approach or something like that, where they tell you like everything should be like a joint account and everything is, you know, or like everything's, I don't know how, I honestly don't know how they do it, but I feel like there is that type of understanding maybe in some cultures where this is the best way to do it. And you're kind of dismantling that. Like, no, any like way is okay as long as there's a conversation around it. And I mean, I'm sure there are certain ways that like in some cases would not be okay.
I wouldn't give it as a blanket statement. You're but I think that, there's probably things that are less okay. But I try to be careful in my phraseology of sort of not a right wrong, but right, what is the energy? And what I like that you enumerated is, what is the language? That's what I was trying to get to, right? What is the language? Is it my money, your money? Is it our money? Is it our money, but we keep it in separate accounts because we both make money, or even I put money in your account, but and you can see everything in the other account. But this way, you know that you can just spend that on self-care. And I put it there so that it's like that. Or we have a joint account for self-care, and we each have our separate for expenses that we each take care of because it's convenient for us, right? There's just so much nuance. And again, especially nowadays where there are so many people where they're both making money. Again, it still could be both making money, even if it's not both working in an official job, because everybody works really hard. I was like reading part of that and then I couldn't. But yeah, I think the language and the energy is really, really important.
I like that. And yeah, and dismantling the fact that like the best way to do it is this way versus no, the best way to do it is knowing that you feel safe having this conversation and that you are coming up with a structure that makes you both feel safe and empowered.
And I see the comment now, and I totally agree. So if I said it differently, I didn't mean it as such. It's just, I'm talking about the language that people use, not the language that I would use. But yes, the our money, I'm saying, I agree with this person that it's very important to listen out for that and to work toward the hours. But there are people who would call it in either way mine, whether that's the person going to work, the person staying home, vice versa, both going to work. People will and again, I don't think it's good, bad. So I want to also clarify that. I think sometimes it's just what we're used to or how we were thinking, or sometimes how long you've been working. You're just used to saying that. So it's also just discussing with the person, like you just said, my money. Did you mean our money? You know, do you understand that though I am not technically bringing in the paycheck or my name's not on it, that it's really both of ours. And we both work really, really hard, because if I wasn't doing this, you'd be paying somebody to do this. So all these things are really necessary. So I think, again, there's so much here, so I can't get to all of it, right? But it's important to look at the language.
Like, great. And there was something you wrote here about like attachment and money. Do you want to speak to that? I know we're at 11:30,
sure.
but do you want to speak to the
attachment
piece?
issues, which I've discussed in a previous slide with you, can come up in money. So like people will also play things out. And money is just a tool a lot of the time, like we said before. So if you have an anxious attachment, you may like pull away, take back, do tests with money. An avoidant person might be avoidant about money or discussions about money because that's what they're used to. So it's also important to, again, just relate the attachment piece. Again, whether it's couples counseling, a confidant, just the two people talking, and maybe like looking at YouTube videos on attachment so that they could just learn their styles. I think if you begin to have that discussion about attachment and put money into it premarital, it's so helpful to that relationship, because you begin to notice patterns that were going on in your family as well as in your previous relationships and maybe in the current one that have to do with attachment, even though it's about money, because really money is just feeding into an attachment cycle that already is there.
That sounds like deep though. Like I think we have to like unpack that like on another lives. In like brief though, you're saying that like our attachments, that there are 4 attachment styles, and those relate to money, or money just like can like kind of bring them up a little bit more aggressively, make them more pronounced.
Money can even teach you about your attachment style, because you may notice meaning what's great about talking and looking into money is that because sometimes it's very charged, it will bring out other things about a person, for example, their attachment style. And when you look at it through the lens of attachment, you may begin to understand why the person is utilizing money a certain way or talks about it a certain way that really has to do with, let's say, their attachment style. Now, again, that doesn't make it a match or not a match. It depends on how comfortable you are, how the discussion is going, the evolution of this relationship and these discussions. But it's another thing to then be able to discuss with somebody.
I like that. Yeah, and now that you're saying it, like I get it more. But I think that it's like, it is really powerful. Like it's basically understanding how your attachment is, like how money is just becoming like kind of like a, what's that word, like a tool, but not a tool, like a something else that you're using, like a ploy with your attachment, whether it's like anxious. Amazing. Thank you so much, Caryn. I really appreciated that. I think that this is like an amazing foundational conversation. I think that if people have questions, I think we discussed this prior to this live, that if people have questions they want us to go more specific into, then we'd be happy to do a part two. So this is an announcement for everybody that's listening to this, the recording of it, that if you do have specific questions and they compile in a way that makes sense to have another conversation about this, we'd be happy to. Any closing thoughts that you wanted to say before we wrap?
The most important thing to me, and that I would want to give over, and if anybody listened for 5 seconds, is to know that what I'm really saying again is that I do believe money should be discussed early on in relationships, and that how you feel during the discussion, the energy around it, you know, the mind and body connection, as well as the language used, are really the things to look out for.
Yes, I think that's like perfect. If there's anything you took out of the slide, like take that. That's like enough. But there were so many other like amazing points. I think that also people knowing that there's not one right way. The one right way is having the conversations and noticing how you feel during the conversations and striving to make those conversations safe and effective and standing compassionate. Yeah, there were so many other things, but I think that that's like an amazing take home point. Thank you so much, Caryn, and thank you everyone for joining in and like engaging. And this was amazing. So we will get the feedback, and if it makes sense to do another one, we will. Thanks. Take care. Have a good rest of the day.